Hello and welcome to the Sales Report, where we will learn how alumni from one of the world's top sales programs have found success in both their career and their life. Michigan State University graduates will discuss their professional journeys and the skills, knowledge, and habits required to be top performers. The Michigan State Sales Leadership minor leverages the strength of two nationally ranked colleges, the Broad College of Business and the College of Communication Arts and Sciences. I am your host, Sydney DeHorn, and today we have Mark Russell. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we are excited to have you. Mark, just so you know, the goal of the podcast is to highlight the success of our MSU Sales Leadership minor alumni, which of course includes you. And we've got a whole slew of questions lined up for you today, so we're really excited that you're here.
Awesome. That sounds great. Let's
awesome. All right. So, Mark, you graduated from Michigan State in May of 2010. You majored in business marketing and have, of course, the sales specialization minor. And currently, your title is the Director of Sales at Merrell, which is also known as Wolverine Worldwide. Can you please tell us a little bit about your journey at Michigan State and how you've gotten to the role that you're in today?
Yeah, so I graduated in May of 2010, and at the time the sales program was still classified as a specialization, which I know now today it's categorized as an actual minor, which is awesome. So I believe I was one of or actually the first classes to graduate with it. I can't quite recall, but I definitely found that program very helpful and useful because it fit kind of my personality and my skill set to get into the sales field. Now, I had a little different path maybe than most because I really wanted to break through into the sports and entertainment industry or athletic footwear, and there wasn't a lot of specialized programs around that at MSU at the time. Mm-hmm. I think there might have been some additional things that have been added on or available to students now that kind of want to take that path. But my first job out of school was actually with the Detroit Pistons, and I was in ticket sales. So it was straight up cold calling every day. And at the time, it was 2010. So we were still about 2 years out of the recession or coming out of the recession. And I was working in Detroit, which is one of the hardest hit economies in the country. And I was calling companies to ask if they wanted to spend money on the NBA. It was a very challenging job. And, but at the same time, when I'm looking back on it, it also provided a lot of good experience because it was the toughest kind of selling you can really put yourself through. And I finally got about a year and a half after that, I got an opportunity to work for Reebok, and it was an entry-level field marketing role that required me to move to Philadelphia, which I accepted immediately and uprooted my life and moved to Philadelphia. I'd never lived anywhere else other than Michigan. So that was a big move for me. But I'm very thankful that I did that. The field marketing role was really great because it was kind of a springboard program throughout the brand that really gave you exposure to all the different business functions within the organization. And I didn't have a lot of hands-on retail experience. So it was really good for me to kind of get exposure, visibility to all that. And once I started spending time with some of the sales reps within the brand, I was immediately hooked and knew that's what I needed to do or what I wanted to do. And after about another year and a half or so, I got my first opportunity as a field sales rep, where I was covering I think 6 or 7 state geography or territory. And that was also a really good experience because I was really required to sell pretty much the entire breadth of our product line at the time. I was really interested or passionate about the lifestyle or fashion product that Reebok was creating. And there's a specialized sales group that sells that to specialized retail partners or a specific channel of distribution. And I was able to break through into that group after about a year and a half or two in that more regional role. And I just kind of worked my way up through there. Got some different promotions, more visibility, more responsibility, from calling on national accounts to managing people and teams. And it was, it was a lot of different roles and experiences, but it was great. And then, what kind of led me to Merrell or Wolverine Worldwide was based in Michigan. And my wife and I, we have a young family, and there was just some instability that came along with what I was doing in my previous life or with my previous company. And this opportunity came about with Merrill, and it allowed me to not only, get a new job with more security and roots in Michigan, but it was also a promotion, more responsibility. So it was kind of the best of both worlds.
Awesome. And you just started there about 2 weeks ago, you said, right?
Yeah, I'm 2 weeks in. I'm pretty
Oh.
close to being an expert. But yeah, no, this is the start of my third week. So
Well, first off, Mark, congratulations. That's awesome. Congratulations on basically the promotion and a new job at a new company. That's awesome and really exciting to hear. I know I mentioned this before we started the podcast, but in college I worked for a running shoe store, so it's fun to hear that you are working for a company that touches those products that I was selling when I was in college, and hearing a little bit about your experience. So I know you mentioned that you worked for the Pistons and then Reebok and now Wolverine Worldwide, all having to do with whether it's sports or running shoes or uh, you know apparel that you can wear when you are doing your everyday life, right?
mhm.
Why is it that you were interested in going into that sports area?
I grew up heavily involved in sports. I was a basketball junkie player growing up. Like I started playing competitively when I was maybe like 6 or 7 years old. AAU circuit and all the way through high school. I had had some opportunities to play like small college, like D3, some smaller D2 schools, but I always had my heart set on going to Michigan State, and I wasn't good enough to play at Michigan State, so that wasn't in the cards. But with that, being in that basketball culture for so long, it
Mhm.
also, it opens your eyes to there's another culture like off the court that kind of comes along with it, with sneakers, hip hop, like fashion, all this different stuff. And
Mhm.
I was always kind of into that growing up. My mom always said I was the daughter she never had. I don't know. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but like I've just always been into that stuff.
Okay.
So that's kind of where my passion, and to be able to transfer something that I'm personally am passionate about to my professional career has been something that's definitely kept me motivated or excited about it.
Absolutely. And why did you choose sales? Or what led you to the sales path?
Yeah, like I think I briefly mentioned it at the beginning. Sales has always kind of fit my personality. I love being around people. I'm competitive. It just gives you a sense of motivation and urgency that, some other fields might not give you. And that's just how I'm wired. Like whether I am worried about my job or what I need to accomplish at work, it's just before I hopped on this podcast, it was I know tomorrow is junk and recycling day, and I had to get I had to
Yeah.
get that stuff out on time. Like it's just how I am. So it's been the right path for me, and I think I've known that ever since when I was in school.
I feel like I have a little bit of a similar path from you. I like grew up a total sports junkie and I wanted to go to Michigan State and play sports so badly, but I wasn't quite good enough. So I was looking at smaller schools too, but I'm curious. I feel like I have my own answers, but I'm curious what are your answers to what really helped you from sports in your childhood and growing up to your job today? What were like those main things that stick out? Like, I mean, of course you're competitive, but what were those things that are you're like, that really helped me?
For me specifically, and the business, specifically athletic footwear industry, not only how competitive it is, but how diverse it is. And I grew up in West Michigan. I went to Rockford High School, playing AAU basketball from such a young age and traveling to the cities and playing on the teams that I played on. I was a part of a very diverse group of people. And I think that gave me, not only professionally in sales specifically, but just from a general, like being a human, understanding that not everybody is the same, and how to work alongside people that come from different backgrounds or have different perspectives. And I think that has allowed me to probably be a better teammate and colleague and leader than maybe some other people that haven't had similar paths or weren't exposed to that type of things from such an early age. I have a really strong appreciation for people and consideration of like more on their personal life. Like, what, tell me about yourself. Like, I want to learn about you, not just like, hey, how can you get this job done? So
Mhm.
I think that's really helped me. And as you know, like in sports, like you gotta be a good teammate. You gotta be able to accept some people's flaws and weaknesses to make the whole team better. So I think that would definitely be the thing that was most beneficial.
That's a really good answer, and I think that's good for everybody on this podcast that may listen, that's listening right now, or that may listen in the future. That's it's going to be really good for them to hear that they're going to face. But that will be a really good thing for people to hear. I'm curious from your experiences through that. What has been one of the toughest things that you've gone through? In it can be through college or getting your job or in your jobs right now. And can you share a little bit about that?
Ooh, I would probably say between the move from Michigan to Philadelphia, in my time in Philadelphia to after Philadelphia, I moved to Cincinnati. I was probably not in the best place in my personal life. Sales can also be, if you're in the field, can be a lonely time, whether you're because if you don't have access to an office, if you're on the road all the time, whether that's car, plane, what have you, that's pretty much what you're kind of consumed in. And especially when you're young in your career, like you got to do it, right? Like that's how you,
Hmm.
if you want to work your way up or hit your sales quotas, your targets, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was a really tough time for me, just because I kind of felt like I was in a tough spot personally, but I felt like I was out on an island. Just felt like, there's some times of feeling lonely, but I enjoyed my work. So I think that was huge. Like I said earlier, like I'm passionate about what I do or what I've done in my past, my career. So I found actual happiness in some of that.
Hmm.
That helped offset it. Just trusting that there was a bigger picture, what I was going through, and everybody goes through it at one point or another. But it ultimately like makes you a better person and better better professional, etc. So that was probably a most difficult time for me.
You said enjoy your work. You really enjoyed your work, not so much your personal life at that time. What were you really able to focus on that made you enjoy your work? Like for those that may listen to this podcast that are like, you know what, I have no idea what I want to do. What should they tap into? How should they learn how to enjoy their work? Is there one specific thing that you're like, hey, find your niche and run with it? Like, what is it that people can do to enjoy their work?
You look at the first job I had out of school, I would say that time in my life, I was like I was everything was fine. I was great, or I was happy, but my job, I was miserable. Like
Mhm.
I I hated going to work. I did. I was absolutely miserable. So I think some people, whether they're in sales, whether they're in a different profession, I have some family members that are constantly complaining about their job or their career, etc. And
Mhm.
it's like, well, no one is forcing you to do what you are doing. You have the power to, and it might not be easy, but you have the power, the ability to make a change if you really want to. So
Mhm.
I think the advice I always give students or people that are in sales, like, if you're really not passionate about sales, or if you're not truly passionate about the product or maybe the company even that you work for, like, start thinking about what does really mean something to you, like, and see what's out there, because I mean, you can find something that will fit that mold, and it might not happen right out of college. It probably won't. It didn't
Mhm.
for me. But to keep your eye on the prize and build up that experience and make those connections with, if you find, I think there was a student that I was mentoring a few years ago, and she was just super passionate about like the outdoors and the environment, and but like wanted to get into, she didn't really know for sure, but it was like sales or marketing. And like I opened her up to, like, like Patagonia. Their whole focus is like the environment, but they still
Right,
sell a
right,
bunch of cool product, right? Like, why not something like that? And she was
right.
like, oh, like, that's cool. Like, I didn't know that exists. So I think you just gotta kind of find it, like you said, your niche, or what you're truly like gets you going, whether that's personally, or if there's just a cool company that you like, do whatever you have to do.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point of finding a mentor and asking those questions. Like, tell them what you're interested in. Like, I still don't completely know what I want to do. I'm in my first job, but I think I only got here because I asked questions. And,
Mhm.
I had a couple mentors and I was like, I don't know what I'm interested in. So I asked them the questions and it led me to where I am today. So I think that's kind of what you've reflected too. So it's definitely good to know for people that are listening, just ask those questions, make connections with those people that can help you.
It's so critical. I mean, I know you hear it a lot, but you just never know. I mean, you never know at what point someone that you cross paths with, um,
Hmm.
someone that you worked with, whether that was school, early on in your career. I mean, I'm finding that out. I'm 2 weeks in, and
Hmm.
I'm finding out that the current brand that I'm working for is doing projects or partnerships with people that I used to work with for years, and I
No
know
way.
I know personally. So it's like, man, that's such an easy, for them it was like a ton of work to do that, but like
Hmm.
for me it would have just been like a phone call or an email or a text, and like
Yeah.
going like really quick, because I worked them for years or alongside of them or whatever the case was. So
Hmm.
it's crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have a quick question because you're in a pretty specific industry, I would say, have compared to other people that have been on this podcast. And I'm curious, on a more sales related note, what does your day-to-day look like and what does sales look like with a customer of yours?
So, for the sake of not sounding inept, I'm gonna maybe resort back to Reebok a little bit. So, my last job at Reebok, I was a national account manager, and I was calling on Champ Sports and
Okay.
East Bay, which a little bit maybe before your time, but East Bay used to be like a catalog menu, or a catalog subscription to buy like footwear and apparel. Now they're just a
Yeah.
website. But so Champ Sports is, it's a retail chain that is technically owned and operated under Foot Locker Inc. So it's a part of the Foot
Okay.
Locker Inc. group. They have about 500 brick and mortar locations throughout the U.S. And then Champs also has their own website, and then East Bay has their website. From a sales perspective, those two companies all have buyers or merchants. They kind of, those terms are kind of interchangeable. So
Okay.
buyers that will buy for men's footwear, women's footwear, kids footwear, and they might even get more specialized in that. But for the sake of this, we'll just keep it at men's, women's, and kids. So every quarter I would meet with them, and we'll say pre COVID,
Hmm.
I would meet with them either in Boston, New York, or Florida, because
Okay.
Boston was where Reebok is headquartered. New York, there's is where Foot Locker is, and Reebok also has a showroom there. And then Florida is where Champ Sports headquarters are. So I would meet with them every quarter to show them the new line that they could buy. Um,
Okay.
I would show them the men's footwear line, the women's footwear line, and kids footwear line. And in athletic footwear, you're typically selling 6 to 8 months ahead. If I was out selling right now, we'd be looking into like back to school of
Okay.
2022, basically. That is probably the main focus. And then that's the selling piece. And then on the
Okay.
account management side, you're managing your daily, like your order book. So open orders, any shipping or customer service related issues, you're working on that. You're building out, like I was always building out like 3 to 5 year business plans that would be both an internal and external effort. So, working with my internal teams, whether that's the business planning, our merchandising team, product teams, marketing teams, of like, how can we, take this business from X to Y, or whatever the case might be. And so doing things like that, I'd say that's probably like a quick, kind of a quick snapshot of what it looks like.
I know we're coming to right about time here, but I've got one more question for you. For those listening and for those who are trying to get a job right now, who are, or an internship, or who are looking for a new job because they don't like the one that they're in right now and they're trying to follow their passion,
Mhm.
what's the number one tip that you have in terms of making sure that you are making not only like the right relationships, but doing it the right way? Like, how do you keep those relationships good and consistent?
I think that I've found, and most people wiser than me, I think I once received this advice, was people like to talk about themselves, right? Whether that's me sitting here on this podcast talking about myself, or when you ask somebody, hey, I want to learn about what you do,
Hmm.
and not make it about yourself. So, not, hey, I want to hear about what you do so I can get this job, or I can get your job someday, or whatever. It's
Hmm.
more about, I've always been more about my approach, like, how can I understand what this person does so I can ultimately get better, and I can make those around me better. And I think if you can just grab time with people along the way and try to understand what they're due, and ask follow-up questions or specific questions about that, to show obviously that you're engaged and that you care about what they just told you. I think
Hmm.
come off in a much better light. But I mean, if you can learn something from different functions, it's only going to make you that much more valuable to the role that you're in, the company that you're in, and then also a potential other opportunity that might be in front of you that you don't know about. And I just lived that, because this job that I just got, because of the work that I put in, but all of the different relationships that I established, and the knowledge that I was able to gain from all of those people, that made my value more attractive to this company, because I have that experience now. And I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't really leaned on or developed a lot of different cross functional relationships, whether that was internally or even externally.
Well, everyone that's listening, you heard it from Mark and plenty of other people that have been on the podcast. Relationship building and networking and asking people questions is clearly one of the most important things that you can do for not only yourself, but to get to know others too. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your advice and telling us about your role today and the past roles that you've had and really the advice for those who are going to listen to this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Thanks everybody so much for listening today. Please be sure to follow Mark on LinkedIn and listen in to the remainder of the Sales Report podcasts. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.